All right. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night, and I have my friend Tammy on with me tonight. Tonight, we are doing Recovery Live. We are just going to talk about everything related to recovery. If you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to ask us questions. We're going to talk about the holidays and what it's like to, or how to stay sober during the holidays. We're going to talk about the journey to forgiveness and so much more. I'm so glad that you could join me tonight, Tammy. Thank you so much for coming.
Sonia, thank you so much for having me. I love doing these lives with you. So let me ask you real quick. Are we on Facebook too?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. I'm going to share us on here. So if you want to go ahead and talk for a minute, I'm going to find us
Yeah.
and us.
Absolutely. So, I guess we'll start by kind of talking about how to stay sober during the holidays, right? Because the holidays can be a really hard time for people in recovery. I mean, heck, the holidays can be a hard time for people that aren't in recovery. But, during the holidays, a lot of times we tend to lose people. And so we just figured we would talk about how to stay sober during the holidays, how to go around your friends that might be drinking or drugging on the holidays. And
Mhm.
if you guys have questions or topics that you want us to talk about, drop them in the comments and we're going to discuss everything that you guys bring up here tonight. Hey, Lindsay, how are you tonight? I'm so glad that you could join us. So, Tammy, let's start with this. Okay. First of all, Tammy has a podcast and it's called Hope. Hence, if you look at her jacket, it says Hope. That is the name of her podcast, and it stands for Helping Other People Evolve. Is that right?
Right. That's right. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
So,
go ahead. Sorry.
okay, I was just going to tell you to go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So what my thank you, Sonia, for mentioning that. So what my podcast is helping other people evolve. And what my mission and vision with Hope is just that people know that they're not at home struggling alone. When I first started it last year in March on my sobriety date, I was like, okay, it's going to be all about addiction recovery. But then I learned and thought about how much more there is out just recovery and addiction and alcoholism. There's so many struggles out there, whether it's death, cancer, just getting through your days, depression, just all the things. So I just launched my 86th episode today. Sonia was a guest on my podcast, and so my 86th episode today, and it was a young girl who used to she was addicted to cutting herself, self-harm. So it's all the things out there that people think that they're alone in their struggle, and hopefully, unfortunately, people go through struggles, but like Sonia, myself, the Aaliyah that I interviewed today, we got to a strength. We're getting to a strength, I should say, because it's an ongoing process always. But maybe you'll hear their story and be able to get out of bed that day and just walk outside and know that you're not struggling alone. That there's people here that it will help you, will listen to you, and get through your struggle. So that's what my mission is with Hope. You can find it on Spotify, on YouTube. Is my name, Tammy Lynn Connors, but everything else is Hope. So yeah.
I love that. From the struggles to the strengths.
Yes, as we know, right?
Yes. And speaking of that, right? So, why don't you tell them a little bit, maybe just a preview of your story? If you want to hear her whole story, you're going to have to go to my YouTube and watch it because I have Tammy's story on mine too. But maybe just like a preview about your sobriety journey and healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like right now, coming up on the holidays is always tough. It's tough for everybody. I was just talking to my friend today, and everybody thinks the holidays are joyous and all of that, which they should be. But a lot of us go through a lot of grief and a lot of trauma throughout these holidays. My journey started out at a young age of family addiction, growing up in a Irish Catholic home. And I'm just mentioning this right now. Like Sonia said, you'll have to go to her page, her YouTube, to hear the whole story. But on December 7th of 1978, which is tomorrow, would be the death anniversary of my father, my mom screamed to me upstairs, called the neighbors. I called the neighbors. I ran downstairs only to find my mom holding my father's lifeless body in the bathtub. He had drowned in our bathtub. He had been sick for a really long time from alcoholism. So I went through the whole battle of, I will never be an alcoholic. How could my father leave us like that? Well, fast forward to the age of 37, after going through a lot in my life, here I was standing in front of a mirror doing shots of Listerine just to get me through a moment of my day, to get to the store to get my vodka, because vodka was my drink of choice by that time, and that it just escalated from there, for 30, well, that was when I was 37 is when I quit. So it was just like I kept going, and that is a lie. I quit drinking at 39. Well, 38 and a half. I was almost 39. Good Lord. The time. Oh, I still think I'm 32. So, it's trying to do that math. But anyways, it escalated to where I was that alcoholic. I had pancreatitis 3 times, in and out of the hospital. I lost a son in 1992 to SIDS, and that's coming up December 11th. This is the date that he passed away 30 years ago. So, I had all this trauma going on in my life, and I didn't know what to do with it all. So I hid it behind a bottle and drugs, and that's just what I did. And thankfully, God had me go to my job completely inebriated. The night before I went to work, my blood alcohol was 0.399. I was rushed to the hospital. They had me leave the hospital with one little piece of paper that said, "Do not drink again." And I continued to drink the next day, and I ended up getting fired from my job. And that was when my life completely turned around. I got fired on March 8th of 2000. Well, I got fired on March 9th of 2004. And that was the day that I quit drinking. Like I say that's my sobriety date, but I was probably so still drunk but I didn't touch any alcohol that day, like on purpose. So, that was my sobriety date. And ever since then, I've been on a journey, we still go through things in life, and you and I will talk about that a little bit more. But, I'm here today, 18 and a half over, and all I want to do is let people know that no matter what life throws at you, you can get through it without drinking or drugging. And I'm a living testimony of it, because it's been thrown at me. Believe me, 18 and a half years hasn't been all, rainbows and unicorns, as they say. But, I'm here today, sober, happy, healthy, sharing hope with the world. And I get to meet amazing people like Sonia. So that's what's even better for me. So, yeah, that's a little bit.
Yeah. I love that. 18 and a half years. That is just amazing. I love it so much. And I'm so glad that we got connected, Tammy.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at some of the comments real quick. Okay, Margaret says, I appreciate all you do for us out here in early recovery. And I think maybe we'll talk about that for a minute,
Yeah.
just like the beginning, because I know your story of early recovery and I love it. So I figured maybe we could talk about that for a minute too. Stacy says, I don't have trouble not using because I'm pretty deep into my recovery, but I'm such a exploitive word. I hate the holidays now and I feel bad for those around me who love it like my mom and my son. Well, Stacy, if you're still on, maybe you could put in the comments, what is it about the holidays that you don't like?
Yeah. Yeah.
And John Harrison, Pat, send me a message or I'll send you a message. Grasp is actually a nonprofit in my area, and they sponsor a lot of halfway houses or people going into halfway houses. Matter of fact, in my recovery journey, they sponsored me at a halfway house. And unfortunately, I wasn't ready at the time. So I didn't make it, but they do a lot of great stuff for the community. Derek says, hey, Tammy.
Hey.
All right. Sober is cool. Hey, Brad, how are you doing tonight? I'm so glad that you're on here. I'm actually doing a podcast with Brad in 11 days.
Yay. Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited. He just started a podcast called Sober Motivation. I think he's in the beginning of his second season right now, and it is just taking off. It's doing so well.
Is that on TikTok?
No, it's on I want to say Spotify and Google. Does Google have a podcast too?
I'm sure they do. There's all kinds of, like, my podcast. When I put it on my Buzzsprout, it goes all over the place, and people tell me there's like a stitch or something. I'm like, where's that? Just lots of places, and I don't, know where they're all at. So, yeah.
That's so cool. So it takes like a little clip it of your podcast and just shoots it out all over the place?
Oh no, it takes my whole podcast and shoots it out all over the place. So when I launch it on Buzzsprout, it goes to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, that Stitch. I'm sure there's a Google one that it goes to too. So it takes a whole podcast and puts it out there to the different areas. So,
that's so cool. I love that.
So,
all right. Brandon says you've got a story. I'm so proud of you. You're a rock star.
We all have a story. That's the thing, I've learned with doing my hope. The stories that I hear are incredible, and the stories of healing for people sharing their stories is incredible, and I feel like every person on this entire universe is sometimes struggle, but it's just getting out and being able to share it with others. Trent Shelton, who I listen to a lot, says your transformation will lead to someone else's, your transparency will lead to someone else's transformation. And that's what I've learned on this journey of hope. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, and I tell you what, Brandon has a story too. I've read some of he posted a story one time or a snippet of his story on Facebook one time. I can't wait to hear the whole thing. I'm trying to get him to do a story with me on YouTube.
yeah,
One of these days he will.
yeah, yes. So, do everybody know about your story?
Well, yeah. So maybe I can tell my story a little bit. I feel like I posted so much that maybe they do, but let me just tell you a little bit of I'll do like a short version like you did.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I started using when I was really young. And when I started using, I thought that, well, first of all, the person that gave me drugs was also the person that sexually abused me when I was younger. And, so that's where it all started for me. So it was like a trauma in the introduction of drugs and alcohol, and it was also happened when I was at a young age, and I think that just like makes up all of the components to form an addiction, right? Like now that I have knowledge on addiction, I'm learning that those are the factors that determine whether somebody's going to become an addict, and I had all of them: the genetics, the trauma, the use of early age. I mean, I had it all. So I started using. And I thought when I started that I was just having a good time. I thought I was having fun. I thought I could stop anytime I wanted to. But very quickly, I mean, by the time that I was 18, I was in my first treatment center or in my first detox, because my family wanted me to get better. And so I knew I was an addict by the time that I was 18 years old, but I certainly was not ready to stop. And my addiction progressed over all of the years. They just progressed. It started with drinking and lightly drugging, I guess you could say. And it eventually just progressed into harder substances. And I did them uh, more dangerous ways, and the things that I did to get them became more dangerous, and the people that I hung out with became more dangerous. I mean, it just got worse over the years, but I never wanted to stop. No matter how bad it got, how many rock bottoms I hit, I just didn't want to stop. So what led me to getting clean is the last couple of years of my addiction were really bad. I mean, they were really bad. I mean, I've shared on my page before, maybe you guys know, maybe you don't, that when in 2016, my husband contracted endocarditis from using. And that was like a really scary time in my life. I did not know if he was going to make it from one day to another. And let me tell you something that happened today. I got to tell you this. I know we've talked about this before. If you guys don't know this, Tammy and I did TikTok live every single Tuesday for like months. And now we are going to do Facebook live once a month, first Tuesday of every month. So I hope that you guys come and join us. So we've talked a lot, but I think we've talked about re-entering the room before, right? When you
Yes.
go back into those places that you've made mistakes and effed up, and then you go back and you create new memories there. Well, today, speaking of my husband being sick with endocarditis in the hospital, and I wasn't allowed to go see him because I was a using addict, and it was just the most horrible time of my life. I went to that hospital today to
Oh,
go and see somebody for my job. And I was in the same bathroom that I used to shoot up in when Steve was in the hospital. And then I had to go to the same floor that he was at when I thought he was going to die. And this time when I went there, I went back as a different person, and I got to create a new memory. And instead of going there in a painful time in my life, I got to go there and help somebody.
wow.
So I just wanted to tell you about that real quick. But
Dude, that is so huge. God did that for sure.
yes.
Go, Sonia. Yes. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was thinking too.
yeah,
It's truly a God thing. But
yeah.
so getting back to the story, when Steve almost passed away, and eventually he did get better. It took a long time for him to get better, but eventually he got better. And we didn't get better though. He got better physically, but he continued to use. And as soon as he got out of the hospital, he went to jail. And when he went to jail, that put him out of my life. And my addiction got much worse. I mean, all bets were off. I had already, I think, lost custody of, I hadn't lost custody of my kids, but they were living with my mom. So I had failed as a mom. I lost my husband. I was a horrible person. That was the time in my life where I was thinking, like, how am I ever going to go meet my maker one day when I have just failed at everything? I thought I was just a big, fat failure and that there was no possibility for a life for me. So I figured, you know what? I might as well just go fuck it all up now because I'm already a terrible person.
Right.
So it just got so much worse. And those last couple of years of my addiction were really, really dark. But on my birthday of July 2018, I got arrested. And I was mad at the cop that arrested me on my birthday. And today, when I look back on that, I'm so grateful for that because that's what started the sequence of events in my life that led me to getting clean. So from July 2018 until July 2019, I was in and out of jail. I would get arrested. They would let me out on the terms that I wasn't going to get high. But as soon as I got out, I got high. So then I would go back to jail. And I just kept doing that until finally it all caught up with me and all came pouring down on me. The consequences of my actions, they just all caught me at once. So July 1st, 2019, that's my clean date. It was the last day that I used. That is the day that I got arrested. And, I sat in jail. Department of Children and Families showed up right after I got there, gave me a drug test. They were taking my kids away. They were coming for custody this time. I already didn't have them. They were at my mom's house, but they wanted to take custody from me this time. I had 2 violations of probation on 4 felonies, and they were wanting to send me to prison. Nobody would take my phone calls. I wasn't allowed to speak to my kids. Nobody was sending me commissary money because they thought I was going to spend it on drugs, which I might still be a little resentful for, but anyways.
Forgive
But
them. Hey,
right? We're talking about forgiveness tonight. I mean, come on.
thing
But
is, uh,
huh?
you survived without those commissary things, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? Just speaking up, like as I'm saying this, the reason I'm saying this is because that's what I needed. So I guess I am okay with that.
Mhm.
But that gave me the gift of desperation. I was so fed up with my life. I was so tired of, who I was, that failure. I was tired of being that person. I didn't know there was another life available for me, but I knew I was tired of living that life. And that was my gift of desperation. So I was in jail and I started to get a little hope because they would come in and they bring me in meetings and they would tell me there's another way to live and that it was available to me if I wanted it. And if I wanted it, then all I had to do was what they did and I could have what they had.
Uh-huh.
So I was supposed to go to prison, right? I was offered 20 and a half months in prison while I was sitting in a meeting one day. I got a call from the public defender. They said 20 and a half months. If you don't take this, you're looking at up to 20 years. So you might as well just take the offer. So that was my plan. I was going to take the offer. Well, the meeting that I was in that day, the person that brought in the meeting asked me what happened when I hung up the phone. And I told her what happened. So I had court the next morning. So we finished our conversation or whatever. I went back to my cell. And then the next morning I went to court. And on my way into the courtroom in my very last holding cell before I walked into court to see the judge, I surrendered. I've been hearing about surrender and I've been hearing about God's will. And I finally just said, you know what, God, whatever you want from me, I'll
Mm,
take it. If you want me to go to prison and I'm going to lose custody of my kids, I understand that. I failed. I fucked up. I understand. And I'm willing to accept the consequences because I felt like I deserved that anyways.
mhm,
But if all this stuff that they're telling me is real and it's for me, then I surrender to that right now. And I walked in the courtroom, and that lady that brought in the meeting the day before was in the courtroom. And she was on the board at a treatment center in my area, and she got me accepted into that treatment center. And so instead of going to prison and losing my kids that day, I got a chance. And
mm,
the judge told me, this is your chance. If I see you again in my courtroom, you're going to prison for a long time. So they told me that if I wanted what they had, I had to do what they did. So when I got to the treatment center, I did the things they told me to do. I connected with people. I got honest with myself and with others. I became willing and, did all the things they told me to do. I mean, all the things. I wanted it by that point in time because
mm,
when I like something, I'm an addict. If I like it, I want more. And by that point in time, I liked the way that I felt and I wanted more.
mm,
So, here we are today. It's been 3.5 years now, and I got my kids back. I got off of probation. I mean, everything that I never even could dream of. I mean, if you would have told me when I first got here to write down the things that I want, I would have far shorted myself because I have obtained things that I never even dreamed of. I mean, my God, I mean, here we are on this channel right now speaking to thousands of other recovering addicts. I would have never dreamed this day would come. You know, I never dreamed any of this stuff was possible. But here we are just sharing a message of hope to the next sick and suffering addict saying recovery is possible. If it's possible for me, it's possible for you too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about surrendering. You know, that's the thing. Like always growing up, I mean, I always believed in God, you know, and whatever I always tell people, whatever you believe is what you believe, whether it's God, the universe, whatever it is you believe, right? My faith is in God. And the day that I decided to finally quit drinking because I was fired from my job and my 14-year-old son was in his bedroom. And one of these days, if I didn't quit, one of these days soon, if I didn't quit, he was going to find me dead. You know, I weighed 85 pounds, pancreatitis, you know, my liver was starting to fail, my eyes were yellow, my cheeks were sunken. And all I could think about was my son finding me like I saw my father. You know, my father was 34 years old, I was 13. All I could think was, my God, Chad's going to walk in the bathroom or walk in the living room and I'm going to be dead on the floor. And what's that going to do to him for the rest of his life? So at that moment is when I surrendered. Like I literally laid on the floor. I kicked, I screamed, I yelled, I need your help, God. And all the people that God had put in my life previous started, the reasons why they were there started showing up. Like my really good friend's mom was a pastor, her and her husband. And I used to think they looked at me like I was the devil. I went knocking on her door and she opened her door and sat me down and prayed with me and cried with me and walked me through some of the things I needed to get through. And the AA meetings I had been through, you know, I can always thank my kids, my two boys, I can thank them for their dad. That's about all I can ever thank him for. And my bonus children. Other than that, I could thank him for the AA rooms because I didn't know where to. That was where I went because I used to sit in them with him. You know, so it's amazing once you do that surrender, how things will start changing. You know, it just starts changing. Now, I don't like to ever think anybody I talk about. I say this to us every time we talk, Sonia. Sonia and I don't walk outside and there's this great big bubble around us that God says, oh, I'm going to protect those two from everything. That is not true. You know, a lot of feeling our feelings. And I know that, I mean, you're early at 3.5 years. That's so amazing, but it's so early too.
Mhm.
Even me, I know people that have been sober 20 years that guess what? Go back out. I don't
Yeah.
like that. You know, I say I have no desire whatsoever in my soul, but I never want to be complacent with it. You know, I
Mhm.
am on guard because I know how it can go, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so true. I mean, especially around the holidays. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that have had significant time relapse. Okay, I want to get to some of these comments real quick. We have a lot
Yeah,
of comments coming in. Okay, so I just want to say hi to a few people and I want to get to Misty's comment. Misty has been trying to catch our lives for like a couple of weeks now and I personally know Misty. Um I hope you don't mind me saying Misty. I know her through her daughter. And I Tammy, I feel like I've told you about her daughter before,
maybe.
but I don't want to say her name on Facebook because I don't
Right.
want to break her anonymity. But do you remember me telling you about the day my sister-in-law passed away?
Yes.
Her daughter is the girl that sat next to me at the meeting that night.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So it's truly like, you know, call it God, call it whatever you want to call it, but this girl has been brought into my life for a reason. You know,
Right.
and just like I love what you shared a minute ago because you said that all these things that happened in your life before, you started to understand why they were a part of your life and that just I connected with that because I feel like her daughter is one of those things, you know, and I just pray and I believe that this girl is going to get clean. So she has a question. How do you help the ones that are getting out of jail and they say that they want help, but they run last minute every time?
Mm, mm. Well, you're an example of that. I mean, you know, right? I mean, the only thing I can say about that is I have a niece that she unfortunately she's still alive, but in 2018 she was dropped off at a hospital. The man took her in. She was dead. He handed her over. She had heroin, crack, and meth in her body. um She was without oxygen at least 10 minutes. They brought her back twice. Oxygen again, just anyway, she was in a coma and sedated and on a ventilator for 6 days. She has traumatic brain injury, but she is an example of that for me. Like I had to really detach myself from her. But when she was in jail, she would call me or she'd write me a letter. Aunt Tammy, this is the time. I want to get help. I would be so happy and I would get everything. She would get out and I'd never hear from her. So I don't really know. Sonia would probably know better of this answer because I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. And the thing about addiction is, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And, we think with our best intentions, I think sometimes we're so good at manipulating, we can manipulate our own selves,
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think with the best of intentions, we think that we're really going to stay clean. But I think addicts have a tendency to self sabotage sometimes. So, if you're getting out and it goes back to people, places, and things. If you're getting out and you go back to the people, places, and things, then I feel like it's only a matter of time. But, I know you, Misty, and I think that in this particular case, just that belief in her and the boundaries balanced out together is really what's best for her. And I just have to believe. I mean, I know for me, like every single time that I went out, it got worse every time. And I wound up in a worse situation every time. But that pain was good because that pain is what finally led me to getting clean. I mean, I've shared before that in the last couple of months of my addiction, or actually the last year and a half, it was so bad. I mean, it was so dark and it was so bad. But I needed that because that pain and that misery and that darkness that I was in is what changed it for me and made me want to live differently. So, I don't know, that's a tough one on what to do, but I feel like with the proper supports in place, if she's going to, say, a halfway house or a treatment center or around other people who are clean and sober, that, she could definitely succeed, even if she's feeling like self sabotaging.
Mhm. And I think too, I know that just from talking to different people, even in the last few weeks, I've talked to a few people that are like, oh my gosh, Tammy, I have a problem. Their life fell apart that day. And then the next day I talked to them, they're like, well, I don't really think my drinking problem's that bad. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to yesterday and let's talk about because I think it's so easy to forget and just put all those feelings and all that stuff aside and not deal with them because then you get out and you're like, oh, well, I'm not in jail now and I'm not feeling as sad as I was. And you just, like you said, you go back to the people, places, and things that you cannot do that. It's just, there's a saying in AA, and I'm sure they say it in NA too, man, you sit in a barbershop long enough, you're gonna get your hair cut.
Mhm.
I just talked to a lady. So I work at the casino, and now you want to talk about an addiction that people don't realize how bad this addiction is because it's so normalized, right? It's okay to scratch off tickets. It's okay to go bad. It's okay to go gamble. Two examples. I had a lady sitting in there the other day and she was playing and I said, you got a player's card? She's like, no, I kept coming with my husband and I kept sitting watching. And then finally I decided to join them. Oh, perfect example. Well, then the other night I was leaving work and there was a little baby. He was 10 months old, sitting on one of our gaming agents' lap, watching a little TV, watching her phone. His mom left him in the car. The car was running. It was on the second floor of our parking garage. He was not restrained in his car seat. And the one gaming agent said anybody could have taken him. And she was in playing slot machines. And at the same time of me being so angry at her, I had to look at it with compassion. Like, this lady is an addict. It's no different than sitting outside a crack house and going in there and doing the crack. It's no different than having my son sit in my car while I ran into a bar to get a drink, right? There's no difference. And so I think that a lot of it has to do with the compassion. And also when your daughter or whoever it is getting out of jail, man, they need to have a plan. Like, pick you up at the jail and take you somewhere, not have them walk out of jail and they'll get a hold of you later, because that's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work like
Mhm.
that. That's when they go off and they're back to where they were at again. And then, like you
Yeah.
said, the self-sabotage, and then you're mad at yourself, and now what are you worth again? And it all just is that vicious circle over and over again.
Yeah, I that's great, Tammy. That's a great answer, and that's so true. And I think that, when we were just talking about jail, it just dawned on me, what helped me now that I think about it when I got out of jail was the accountability. I mean, I know that we've talked about this before, but I don't know if I would have stayed clean if I didn't have the accountability that I had, because I had community control, which is house arrest, but you don't have to wear a bracelet, but all the rules are the same. I mean, you're at home unless you've been approved to leave. That's the only time you can leave. So I had community control, plus I had a DCF case plan. So I was doing 3 drug tests a week. The only time I could leave was to go to work or to go to a meeting. So guess what? I went to meetings every single night. So it's the only thing I could do.
Right.
But that accountability, I mean, I really feel like that's what helped me in the beginning. So hopefully when she gets out of jail, she's getting out of there with some accountability.
Yeah, for sure. For
Okay, so we have somebody, Jason says he just want to thank you all and everybody else in the NA and AA fellowship. He's fixing to celebrate his year anniversary on the 16th of this month. He's
awesome.
watching from the Oxford House in North Carolina.
Congratulations to you, Jason. Awesome. And thanks for sharing that with us, because that's it. You're sharing that with us, and I'm happy for you, and stay on the right path. Don't let this deter you, because I say this a lot. The biggest bully that we have is ourself. People can be out there saying, I got bullied, being bullied. You're bullying yourself more than anybody bullies anything. And just stick with the program. And I say that life hits us, and maybe we could talk about that a little bit right now. Like I said, my 18 and a half years have not been all rainbows and unicorns. I've had relationship failures, I've had things happen in life, but through all of it, I've never had to pick up use again. And that's the biggest thing. And I know that people will say, like, and I mean, when I say I've had things, and I always tell this to Sonia, when I say this, I don't say this for like to feel sorry for me, but I just want you to know life happens. In 2012, my bonus son, who had been my little stepson since he was 18 months old, I always stay close to those kids. He was killed in a single car drinking and driving accident. And he was one of the best men that I've ever met in my entire life. His song was Simple Man, and that's exactly what he was. And we lost him that day. And many people could use that as an excuse to go drink and drug again. Like, your grief is overwhelming, and grief is overwhelming. But we have to make those decisions. What is worse for us, that grief or that life that we were living before? I always say, never forget how sick you were. And Jason, you being so new in recovery, never forget that day that you quit and why you quit and how sick you were. I think about it, and I'll tell you straight up, I remember puking yellow bile every single day. Just disgusting. I got sick a few weeks beginning of September, and I was vomiting, and that yellow bile came up. It scared the living shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, no, I can't be sick like this. I've been drinking 18 and a half years. What is happening? But it's that remembrance of that. And then 2020, like I tell everybody, was a shitty year for everybody. I know. I lost my best friend. He had been clean for, I think, 5.5 years. He took a Percocet. It had fentanyl. 34 years old. Found him, gone the next day on Valentine's Day. In April of 2020, my really good friend in Arizona, her ex-husband to be, came up to her car and shot her and killed her. He shot her 14 times in her car, left with 4 children. And then in August of 2020, my mom passed away. So it was just all the things for everybody. But throughout all of that, since I've learned the tools to have, I didn't have to use or drink or anything like that. And that's the biggest thing that Sonia and I talk about this a lot, is keeping those tools, keeping that, and never become complacent. I mean, I hear it all the time, and I used to kind of laugh at it, but now I know, like, I will never be that complacent, because I know somebody that just was clean for 10 years that went back out again. And it's heartbreaking, and they're the same person they were 10 years ago when they quit now. So yeah, just
Yeah.
stay prayed up and just do as they say.
Yeah, let's talk about the tools for a minute. So Robert says that he's been clean for 2.5 years and he doesn't have cravings, but he's always thinking about the fear of relapse coming back. How do I stop thinking about that all the time, and how do I move on? And I'm so glad that you said tools, Tammy, because I think that's really the key to that, is there's a good healthy fear of relapse. I mean, I'm afraid if I relapse it, it's going to take my life. That's
Right.
what keeps me from doing it. I don't want to let my family down, and the people that I've grown to love these last few years, so there should be a healthy fear, but not a paralyzing fear. And I think as long as you use the tools that we've been taught since being clean, then you shouldn't have to worry about that one day at a time, right? So,
Right.
what are some of the tools? So, this is what I was wanting to ask you, Tammy. I know that in the beginning of your journey, right? Like those first couple of weeks or months, what were the tools? What did you do to help you stay sober in the beginning?
Wow. So for me, what I did is I immediately, like I said, I knew where AA was and I knew that's where I had to be. Right. So like I said, I went to my friend's mom's house. She gave me a Bible. She told me to read the Psalms. And this is something that I think is important. So what I did is every day, like day one, I read Psalms 1, 11, 21, 31, 41, 51, 61, all the way down. And then day two, I read 2, 12, 22, 32, 42. And I've done that again since then because it's really good. The Psalms are really deep, but they really make you feel your feelings. And then I went to 3 AA meetings a day, Sonia. I went, I got up in the morning, I went to an AA meeting, and then I went to my ex sister in law's house. I knocked on her, welcomed me in. After that, I go to another AA meeting. And then I went to my friend Tammy and Greg's house. I knocked on their door. They let me in. And then I go to another AA meeting. Then I sat at my friend Tammy and Ed's house in Bridget and Wes's. And I just sat there. Some days I talked. Some days I laughed. Some days I cried. Some days I just didn't even know what to do. I just knew I couldn't pick up a drink. I couldn't be by myself because my drink, my vodka, you talk about it. And it was my best friend. That was my best friend. And it sounds weird if you don't understand that, but that bottle of vodka was my best friend. It kept me away from people. It kept the harm away. It kept the pain away. I didn't have to deal with me. It was just that big blockage. So that's what I did for 6 weeks straight, nonstop. And I just listened and I listened and I listened. I didn't talk. I listened and I learned. And that was my biggest tool in the beginning. And my biggest tool of all is God, 100% to this day. Without him, I wouldn't be sitting where I'm at today. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my tool from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for me, I love what you said about just surrounding yourself with people and talking about how you feel. No matter how you feel, as long as you don't pick up, you won't get high. And if you surround yourself with other people that are sober or that are clean and you stay around them, like that's a great tool, having connections, right? And talking about how you feel and having faith. I really think that's an important part of it because I think, especially in early recovery, we get it in our head that we're going to get everything back. And I've got to do this. I got to get a job. I got to get a place. I got to get my kids back. I got to get off probation. I have to do all of these things. But I mean, we only have today, and the only power that we actually have is power over ourself and our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions. And, so if we can control that, then
Mm-hmm.
all of the other things tend to fall in place, especially when we have faith that it's going to work out the way that it's supposed to work out if I just keep my hands out of it. And I think maybe that goes back to that surrender thing again.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, the faith thing, like you just said. So when I say that, you like you said, I got to do this. I got to do this. I was a single mom. I didn't save. I had just enough money always just to pay my bills. And here I get fired from my job. And I think I had $300 in my bank account. And I was like, what am I going to do? And that's exactly what I told my bosses. Like, I have no money. I don't know what I'm going to do. And they're like, we're sorry, Tammy. We can't have you work here anymore. And I remember I called my ex-mother-in-law and she loaned me $500. I did not work for 6 weeks, you guys, like nothing. There was no income coming on at all. I worked with my landlords. I made the phone calls, those dreaded hard phone calls, like, hey, I have no money. I'm an alcoholic. I'm trying to change my life. Can you, let the rent go for 6 weeks or whatever? And I did all those things. And I 6 weeks. And then I finally got a regular, another waitressing job and not in a bar, and working and had to work my way out of it. That's the thing, faith, man. Faith is huge. And if you have that faith of a mustard seed and you really believe that God will get you through, I'm telling you what, to get you through anything.
Yeah. Well, I also love that you said that more than just faith, you accepted responsibility and got honest with other people. And you're like, listen, I'm an alcoholic. I'm trying to change my life. Can you just give me a break and let me show you? I think that's really important. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have more questions. And I hope you don't mind. Maybe you can share your experience. I know I won't say who it is, but I know that you have a family member who is still an alcoholic, right? So we have a lot of family members of people that are in addiction in this chat right now. And somebody said, what can you do for a loved one that has an addiction? I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. So yeah, she says uh, she feels I don't care because I set boundaries, but I love her very much.
Uh, yeah. And I, so yes, so I do. I have a sister that is actually a practicing alcoholic addict, as I call her. And I had to set those boundaries too. And it's hard. It's hard. And I help her out once in a while. I don't enable her, but I'll help her out. I'll buy her a pack of cigarettes once in a while, something like that. But what I had to do too is set those boundaries. And she did the whole like, oh, you don't love me and you think you're better than me and all of those things that an addict's going to say to you. And I just tell her, I love you. I love you from afar. Now she can be very mentally abusive, like just degrading, making me feel like, how that whole turn it around and make me feel like I did something wrong. I'm like, wait a, you know what I mean? Like I lived like that for years with my ex. Like I come home and he'd be like, you're cheating on me. I was like, I wasn't cheating on you. And then he'd be like, I cheated on you because you were cheating. You know what I mean? He just turned it all around. And I'd be like getting punched in the face because I did nothing. Right. So I'm like, my sister can be like that. So the last time that I moved away for a little bit of time, and the last time that we were together, like a few months ago, we live close now, but we were together, and she started her mouth about thinks that I stole money for my mom, just all these things that aren't true, right? And I finally had to say, listen, if I am going to spend any time with you, you cannot be like this towards me at all. I will not pick you up. I will not spend any time with you. I will tell you that I love you because I do love you because you're my sister and I love you, but I will not be abused anymore. I will not let this happen. She's still, I picked her up on Thanksgiving and she was feeling pretty swell, let me tell you. And we went to the dinner. We went there, we ate, I took her home. I said, I'm not, you know what I mean? So it's hard when it's family, I get it, but it's also hard when it's friends. We got to pick what our heart is. And as much as and we don't want anything to happen to them, we also have to be like, we cannot be an enabler because I learned this. I would belong to a group and it's called Families and Addicts Coming Together. And so it was the addicts and the families, right? We had this meeting and it was really a cool meeting. I'd really like to start it up again. And I've lived on both sides. Like I said, my ex was a crack addict, and an alcoholic and an abuser. So I've lived on that side too. And so I remember, I don't remember where I was going with this. Darn it. Oh, enabling. Remember this, if anybody out there like that, you want to give them the money, if I get my sister cigarettes, I'm buying her a pack of cigarettes because I don't want to be the one to send her $10 and she goes and gets a pill off the street and it has the fentanyl in it. And so when it comes to the enabling part of it, I'm not going to go buy her a bottle of vodka, but you have to remember when we're helping so much, we're helping to take them sometimes to their death. It's unfortunate, but it's learning those boundaries. I've done some podcasts on boundaries. There's a book out called, Your Boundaries. We got to learn our boundaries, and then we don't have to be mean about it, but we have to be like, I can't allow myself to get into that because you're just hurting yourself too. That's how I feel anyways.
I completely agree with you, and you're right. We don't have to be mean about it. I think there's like this boundary balance, right? Maybe in the beginning we have to be mean while we're learning to set the boundaries because it's hard to set boundaries with people that we really love and we want to help. But I think there's this like balance between setting boundaries, like you did with your sister. You said, "I'm not going to be around you if you're going to behave like this," and then she changed the behavior, right? But we could still love people and set boundaries at the same time. And I think that's where that balance comes in. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still sometimes start sending me text messages that are like, what? Like mean. And I just don't respond. And I know that she's going to get sober the next day, and she probably won't even remember she sent me those messages. So I've learned not to respond, because that's a big thing in that. We start responding, and then it's back and forth, and then the next thing you know, it's an explosion, and you're upset, and they don't even remember half the things they just said to you, and they really don't mean it. They're just broken. They're just broken. And so
Mhm.
I just love her from afar. That's what I have to do. I keep my boundaries. I've learned detachment. If you whoever asked that question, if you can start like listening to some YouTube videos, or reading some books about detachment. Detachment doesn't mean I don't love you. Detachment means you're saving yourself.
That's right.
Huge.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of what you said, I mean, from an addict's perspective, I mean, I can tell you that when I was using, the things that I said and that I did are not things I would ever say or do today. So, like you just said about the detachment, I mean, you have to detach the person that's in their addiction from the person that you know and love, or that family member or friend, because it's two different people. I promise you, the person I was before is not the person I am today. I mean, sometimes it feels like a completely different lifetime, because I'm like, who was that? But that was the drugs that had taken over me at that point in time. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we have another wow, there's so many comments in here. Okay, we have another one. So
Okay.
Mary says her daughter, Maria, sorry, says her daughter is sober for 35 days. She knew she could do it as soon as her abuser was behind bars, but he still calls and she still talks to him. He used to strangle her, hit her, etc. They used together, and she said, "How do I get her to stay away from him?" Well, I just want to share something real quick. So I just did a class, right, where I learned about different types of what they call maltreatment. Um, and one of the things that I learned about was domestic violence, intimate partner violence, actually. And people that strangle are more likely to finish the job. I'm afraid to say the word because of censorship and stuff on Facebook, but they're more likely to follow through with that than any other kind of intimate partner violence. So when I see that word, it really worries me, for her safety. So, and that's a really hard one, because getting somebody to see something that they're not ready to see is really, really hard to do. So, I mean, I was in an abusive relationship before, and nobody could get me to walk away from it until I had had enough. But eventually I did have enough. So, I don't know, Tammy, do you have any suggestions?
Well, and I mean, you unfortunately, as a mom, will not be able to make her stop. I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. He was like, it was some players at the casino, and they were talking about this girl. Her guy was in jail for beating her up and everything like that. And then she was like feeling bad, like she should go bail him out and all that. And I was like, because he's manipulating her mind. Those abusers. I've been in a domestic violence relationship. My son's father was very abusive. And I finally left when I had a screwdriver to, and he was going to basically put it through my temple. And that I knew that I could not let my other son had already passed away. I could not let my son think that this is okay, to treat anybody like this. And so, but years and years of abuse before I even had kids. And I still stayed because he would manipulate me, and he would make me feel guilty for leaving, and I was ugly and nobody was going to love me, and all of those things, that get in your head, and you start believing it. And that's what's unfortunate. And for your daughter, I can almost guarantee if I sat and had a conversation with her, these are the things that he's told her. Like, nobody's going to love you. If I get out of here and you're with somebody else, I'm going to kill you. Whoops. I didn't mean to say that word.
That's okay.
That's
Hopefully StreamYard buffers it.
that's say, those kind of things. Like, and nobody's gonna love you, and if they have kids together, I'm gonna take the kids, just all those things, and then you believe it. And you feel you're already broken. I mean, you get beaten up probably more than what she does. And so the only thing I could say is maybe try to get her connected to a counselor now before, she's only 35 days sober. So she needs to get some help. Like, not only, I always say that there's dual diagnosis for sure. Because, like you said earlier, Sonia, we don't just wake up one day and say, that's it. My life sucks. I'm going to go smoke a joint and start drinking. something's happened to us that traumatized us, and we start drugging, drinking. It all comes, and then eventually we're addicted to it, and now we're just hiding all that pain. So I hope that your daughter will, maybe talk to a counselor or somebody, or, you can have her reach out to me. I can chat with her a little bit, about what I went through. It's hard when, I'm 57 and she's probably 20 something, and she's like, what does this old lady know? And I can tell her I know a lot.
Yeah,
So
you've been through it. That's what
yeah,
you know.
yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
I
I
always tell
think
girls when I see them, Sonia, this is something kind of off the chart, but I tell guys this too, but not as much. But girls, I'll look at them and they just smile and they're young. And I say to them, please don't ever lose that smile. And don't let anyone ever tell you that you are not beautiful, because you are. And they look at me kind of funny. And sometimes I can tell if they've been told by somebody, because that's what happens, right? Somebody starts telling you these things, and the next thing you know, you're beaten down, you're broken, and then one man will come up to you and be like, oh, you are so beautiful, and you're like, oh, he thinks I'm beautiful, and then 3 weeks later he's beating you, right? So it's like, not all men are like that. Don't get me wrong, I didn't mean that, but I'm just saying that's how it goes. You get broken, beaten down, and then that one guy, and they know, those guys know exactly who to focus on. So I hope that
yeah.
you reach out to me or somebody about your daughter.
Yeah, you just said
Yeah.
they know who to focus on. Misty said abusers are narcissists and they will control their prey even from behind bars. They do know who to focus on. And there's even like trainings and seminars that you can learn how to carry yourself and your demeanor so that
Yeah.
you don't attract a narcissist. But, I like what you said, Tammy, about, just being aware that she believes the things he's been telling her. She is beat up or beat down, shall I say. She believes probably by now that it is her fault, that if she would be doing something differently, that he wouldn't do that. So I think it's really important to just not be mad at her for
Right.
not choosing that road, because right at this moment she's probably just not strong enough to choose that road. But I will share with you, when I was in jail, I had a class. It was a spark. We call it spark down here. It's the domestic violence program we have, and they gave me a list in this class I was in, the signs of domestic abuse. I had all the signs and I had no idea that I was being abused, because the person that it was abusing me never put his hands on me. He never called me names. He was not the classic abuser that I had always been with before. This dude mind fucked me. And he was a total narcissist and he was abusing me in different ways I just didn't know. So maybe what you could do to help her is just get her some knowledge on this subject, because maybe she doesn't see it that way right now. Maybe she thinks that she loves him and he's a good guy. But maybe if she really knew what abuse was and what it's about and the signs and, the red flags and all that stuff, maybe it would sound really familiar to her, and it might not change right away, but maybe it would spark her mind to think about it. And maybe that would help.
I would reach out, try to find some domestic violence, counseling or something there in your town or whatever too, to just, and the thing is like Sonia said, you can't go at her hard about it, because she's going to defy you. She's going to be like, you don't know, all that. So if maybe you can find somebody to talk to her about domestic violence, and that because if we talk about it, we can tell you the same thing over and over again. It's almost like the insanity of addiction and alcoholism. It's the same thing over and over and over again, and the same stories and the same, I'm not going to do it again. And then every time it gets worse, and so yeah.
Yeah. It actually is, Tammy. You're right. It is just like addiction, because it's what they call a trauma bond. And I've been teaching class on this lately. And in a trauma bond, you get into this abusive, or you get into a toxic relationship that eventually becomes abusive, and you keep going back to the person. And the reason why is because the person literally, quite literally, gets addicted to the partner and the toxicity, because it releases cortisol and dopamine in their brain when they're going through the cycle of abuse, and they literally become addicted to that trauma bond partner. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
all right.
Okay. Well, it is 7 o'clock. So the first Tuesday of every single month, Tammy and I are going to be on here live. And if you guys want to see more from Tammy, go to Spotify and all those things you just mentioned. But the name of the podcast is Hope. Now it's H.O.P.P.E.
Yeah.
And then you can also find her on YouTube under her name, Tammy Lynn Connors. And also, while you're on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, Hope Shot Recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And we go
I
ahead.
love doing these with you. I just want to give you some kudos. You are an amazing woman. You're an amazing wife, amazing mother, amazing friend. I am so blessed to know you. And I just want you to know that. And you should be 100% proud of yourself. I just did an event. I got to share this a little bit because it was pretty powerful. I did an event the other day and it's called Not in Vain, and it's worldwide now, but it's mothers who have lost children to addiction. And it started here in Toledo. The one lady, she's lost two daughters, and they invited us. It was actually at my best friend Josh that passed away in 2020. It was at his mom's house, and I had lost another friend, Tara, 6 years ago, and her mom was there too. So, anyways, we were serving. They wanted 5 people in recovery to serve, which was kind of like some people were like, they want recovery people to serve, and they lost their kids, you know. And I was like, well, that's what they want. That's what they're going to get, right? They did this whole thing and they turned it all around and made us like honored. Like we got this big blanket with warrior and all of this thing. They had an endurance poem. I'm going to read this to you real quick.
Okay.
I'm
I
sorry.
seen pictures of you at that
Oh,
event.
it was almost life changing.
I
Like,
seen a bunch of like people's pictures, the people
yeah,
that have passed away on the table. There was a lot of
yeah,
them.
yeah. So the poem is called Enduring. Do not underestimate someone who has lost everything and is still here to tell the story. Do not underestimate someone who has fought dearly for sobriety, peace, forgiveness, self love, freedom, authenticity, truth. Do not underestimate the lonely. They have braved wars that only those who understand the absence of human connection can do. Even now, they are holding it all together while coming so wildly undone. And sometimes we may see them unravel ever so softly or loudly, or however their soul unties its caged beast. Do not underestimate the ones who have suffered the kind of grief that does not seem to end, who have been broken in places you did not even know existed, the ones who fell into silence because their lungs have no words left to speak. We will not always be strong, no, but we are enduring. You know, and here's the thing. When they honored all of us, that was such a humbling experience to know, but it's also a reminder that we all go through things, guys. We all go through struggles. We all have our days. The biggest thing that I want to leave today with is when you wake up in the morning and if you're able to take a breath, just be grateful you can take a breath. And then if you can open your eyes, be grateful you can see. And if you can hear the little birds chirping, be happy that you can hear that. We have to wake up with an attitude of gratitude in order to get through our days. You know, your mindset is everything. And I love doing this. And like I said, oh, the reason why I went to that is there was a girl that's sober for 3.5 years. And she said, I don't know how to be proud of myself. And I said, be proud of yourself. You have a cleaning business. You have 3 children you take care of, you know, and it's that. So when I said that to you, it's to remind you to be proud of where you're at and what you do, because you are making big changes in this world. You might not realize how big it is, but it's really big. And so I just wanted to honor you in that because I think it's amazing. And that enduring is you. You.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love it. And thank you for getting on here. And we can't wait till it'll be January. It'll be 2023 when we're back on.
Yes, we'll be bringing in, well, actually, we'll be starting the new year.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll be starting the new year. So yeah.
Okay, everybody. I hope you guys have a good night and we will talk to you again soon.
Bye bye. Thank you.